Welcome to The Freight Break with your host, Dan Lindsay, the podcast that cuts through the noise of the trucking industry. We're talking real conversations, real relationships, and real insight that keep the wheels turning.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to this week's episode of The Freight Break, your go-to podcast for all things valuable and profitable in the freight industry, the flagship podcast of the Broker Carrier Summit and the BCS Freight Network. We have a great show for you today. I am your host, Dan Lindsay, and I will be speaking with my good friend, Pam Polyak. We're Polyak Trucking, Polyak Consulting, and all-around expert in freight cost. We're going to be breaking down the cost of trucking in today's episode. So if you are a business owner or business leader in the space, strap in. We're going to have a great conversation. Before we do so, however, let's kick it over to our sponsors at TIE Software.
Meet TIE Software's workflow automation, built to help LTL and FTL freight brokers boost productivity. Use custom prompts to automate repetitive tasks like status updates, carrier changes, and shipment alerts right in the platform. Manage operations with automated scheduling, carrier management, and real-time updates. Workflow automation removes bottlenecks, freeing you up to grow your business. Best of all, it's easy to set up and use. No coding or tech skills required. Choose your workflows and TIE does the rest. Book a demo today and see how TIE makes efficiency happen.
The Broker Carrier Summit is taking over Orlando, Florida, the 28th of October through 30th. Join the best in the biz for 3 days of networking, education, and real talk with the top minds in logistics. If you're serious about growing your business, this is the event for you. Lock in your spot now at brokercarriersummit.com or bcsfreightnetwork.com, where the future of freight takes shape.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to this segment of Breaking It Down. And today we're going to be breaking down the actual cost of freight. I met her a few months ago through a mutual acquaintance of ours, mutual friend, Nate Johnson. And we also got a chance to hang out at our most recent BCS Big Road Tour event in Chicago. Pam Polyak. How are you today, Pam?
I'm great. How are you, Dan?
Doing well. I'm glad. Did I get the last name pronounced correctly?
Yes.
When I looked you up when we were first starting to talk a couple of months ago, you are all over the place. There's Polyak Trucking, there's Polyak Consulting, there's a detailing company? Do you a detailing company as well? So what?
There's a total of 6.
Total of 6. So tell us, instead of telling us what you do, what don't you do? I guess is the better question.
I don't do the job for you.
Okay.
Ooh, that's one of my many slogans when it comes to consulting business. I teach people how to do it. I don't do it for you.
Okay. So talk to us about what it is that you do in the trucking industry, the multifaceted nature of how you provide the services that you get.
Sure. Well, I'll start with an asset-based company. We are third generation. I bought Pops out of the business at the beginning of 2020, January 1st of 2020. So I walked right into COVID from an asset-based issue. But then we also were running a brokerage. Our brokerage just celebrated almost 15 years in business. So from a brokerage end, we were doing a lot of grocery. And so when I took over, I fully took over the asset side and then bought out the remaining percentage that Pops had in the logistics. But over the last 5 years, I've somehow become a serial entrepreneur. I started the detailing business. I have a properties management business. I have a royal factoring business, which is factoring for the truck drivers. And then most recently, the consulting business, which is designing courses and one-on-one coaching to help these truck drivers and these 1 to 2 truck operations scale and be better at what they're doing from a compliance and profitability standpoint. So I'm never bored.
I guess not. You're never bored. There's always there are always 1,000 fires that you're trying to put out, I'd imagine. Well, that's one of the reasons why I think we hit it off when we started talking, especially when we got a chance to sit face to face in Chicago, is because the number of touch points that you have in the industry, the different perspectives that you bring is extremely interesting. It's valuable. And so when it comes to talking about what we're going to talk about today, the cost of trucking, you kind of bring a holistic approach to how to understand your costs as a business owner. So talk to us about what that approach is, and how you come about informing and educating business leaders about how to see their cost structures.
Yeah, I don't. So my background is not in accounting and is not in finance, by any means. I actually have a degree in graphic design and then a master's in business management, but completely not accounting related at all. But what I've learned, and unfortunately I can say it's the hard way, is that numbers are extremely important. I mean, you need to know what your costs are, where your money's going and in and out. And being a small company, it's easy to be like, oh, my bank account's going up. Oh, my bank account's going down. But the reality is there's facts and there's feelings. And that's kind of what I tell my people, is that you have the fact of, does this route, does this run cover your overhead? Is it profitable? Or does it just feel like it's a loss? And there's costs in this business, like your license plate, insurance, several other things. We can all list the names of them, things that you have to pay for regardless of whether you're running or not. And in an accounting, that's your expenses, right? Your expenses need to be paid regardless of whether you run or not. And it's understanding the difference between expenses versus cost of goods. Your cost of goods is your fuel. Are you going to pass through tolls that you can't avoid? Your maintenance costs, the cost of running the truck versus the expenses of having the business. And so what I try and do is teach people how to understand what the differences are, which ones you can control, and then how do you apply it when you're actually bidding on a load, a lane, whether it's a one-off Uber freight type scenario or it's some sort of RFP from a customer, understanding where you need to be at, and then helping you see what area you're actually going to land in terms of backhauls, because we know the round trip is what really makes the load. But understanding that if you decline a load for the day and you sit the truck, those expenses of insurance and your ELDs and those things that are going to cost you whether you're running or not are part of those expenses, and they just roll into the next day. And getting people to see that broad picture, I really feel helps them understand and how to run the business and manage the business while marketing yourself fairly. As an industry, it's easy to say, hey, there's people that are lowballing these rates. These people that are taking the bare minimum. These people are, going in low and kind of screwing the rest of us over. The reality is they may just not know their numbers. They're looking at, hey, I'm going to burn $100 in fuel so I can do the load for $200. Well, you didn't understand that, there's all these other expenses to it. And then on the flip side, you have people who are saying, I need $1,000 for that load. And they're bidding themselves out of it, especially in terms of customer freight. They're saying, well, then how do you lower your expenses so that you can become more competitive in those markets? So it's across the board. It's understanding all of it, but then those off costs, right? Your insurance deductibles, making sure you have the savings in place for that. The plates that you're going to pay for every year, make sure you have a savings for that. Vehicle maintenance, where, we're not, a lot of us aren't thinking saving right now because we're all just skirting by, especially in this market right now. But how do you still make those numbers make sense? It's very important, especially for the small guys who don't understand them.
Right. Well, I think it's important too. So that's one of the biggest talking points specifically when it comes to rate negotiations, right? Is what the truck needs to run. And I've had a couple of conversations with carriers over the years. I'm going to call it the tale of two truckers, right? I've had conversations with drivers who are owner ops. They know their numbers at the back of their hand. And like, you know what? I need $1.75 a mile to break even. That's my break even cost. And I asked them, like, okay, help me understand what goes into that $1.75 a mile. And they mentioned things like the cost of goods, breaking out cost of goods sold, whether it's the insurance, plating, fuel, whatever it might be. And they break out their expenses, office, back office type of stuff. And then I talk to the guys, the owner operators. I don't move for less than $3.50 a mile. And then I ask them their numbers. And it's not a one-to-one correlation, but by and large, on the whole, they don't know how much money they need to operate their company. And so I think this has real life implications when it comes to not only how you run your business, but how aggressively you can negotiate your rates. Because if you find that you can run your company for $2 a mile and you're saying, I don't move for less than $3.50 a mile, well, you're turning down potentially profitable loads just because you don't know your numbers.
Correct. And that's part of teaching them what, because the high and the low, there's both, right? To your point of saying, hey, now what is important to note though is the big difference. Your 1 to 10 truck operations are, and there's even probably a vast difference between those. Your 1 to 2 truck guys, what are they including in those expenses, right? Assuming that they know it. Do you have a house or do you live out of the truck? Do you have a wife that pays or husband that pays the health insurance and you don't have to, or are you including those expenses? So are you to the point of you're paying a dispatcher or 1 or 2 safety people in the office? Do you have a log auditor? Are you paying quick pay on things? All those expenses matter to those people in that bottom line. Then once you get the 10 and over operations, typically they already have a dispatcher or they're getting ready to a safety manager, or they've got those couple things. They're renting probably places to park, maybe a small terminal office, that kind of stuff. And then as you get bigger into the 50 plus truck operations, yes, you have a terminal, you have your own mechanics, you have your own garage. What are all those expenses? They can be spread out a lot more based on all of those, but you got to start somewhere, right? You got to start at the small to get to the big. And what does that all look like? And understanding how that will affect. Are you going to choose to put your mortgage payment in as a monthly expense and call it your rent? Well, from a tax deduction standpoint, there's one way to do it. But then from a living wage expense and you're a 1 truck operation, you're trying to feed your family off of it. What do those all expenses look like? And you can have it as detailed as you want. But to say that your costs of doing business is $3 a mile is going to be an issue on bidding freight, because in this market that doesn't work. So you got to figure out a way to cut those expenses,
Right. Well, especially if you're a smaller operation and you might have 5 trucks, 10 trucks, so you're not going to get that every single time off of a load board, say.
Yep.
I remember one of the most exciting conversations I ever had with a truck driver. He was an owner-op guy. He knew his numbers. We worked together for almost a year and a half. He hauled nursery stock for me in different places around the country. And he finally paid off his truck. And he was like, I'm instantly profitable. Like right now, like I am profitable moving the same loads for the same rate. I said, what are you going to do? He goes, I'm going to go buy another truck. And I was like, okay, help me understand why. He's like,
you see my face? I cringed. I started twitching a little.
Just like, I was like, so why would you do that? He said, well, because now I'll have 2 trucks. And my costs, I already know my costs for the new truck. Mm-hmm. I said, yeah, but who are you going to put in that truck? Like, how are you going to find them? What's that going to do to your insurance? How's all these downstream effects? What's that going to do to your bottom line? And he goes, well, I haven't thought about that. So you should think about that before you go buy another $80,000 cab to put another driver in who you don't know, and hope that he or she works out for the best.
Yeah, and that's the difference when you're trying to grow. There's certainly a time and a place for it. How much are you going to spend on the truck? What money are you going to put towards it? Are you in a position where you can have a loan, but what is that loan amount for? Are you taking the entire $50,000 in savings that you have and buying a 20-year-old truck because it's exactly what you have in money? Well, what about when the injectors go at 500,000 miles or 700,000 miles?
Right.
What happens? Are you spending your entire life savings buying a truck that will not allow you to retire? That's what I try to tell guys. Yeah. You're starting a business. You're not just buying a truck. That truck, you're not going to retire with it. The likelihood that you buy a truck at 40 years old and you're retiring with that thing, should be zero. You probably ran 100,000 miles that year. You're over 1 million in miles on the truck at that point. You have to take that in consideration that you're not going to retire with that truck. You're going to retire hopefully with the business that you built on it. And a lot of these guys don't necessarily understand that or don't see it that way. I've seen it so many times where it's, I got to do a rebuild and I got to do a whole transmission and I'm dumping all this money into it. It's a lemon of a truck and all these other things. And don't get me wrong, there's a time and place where financially it makes sense to put the money into the truck versus a new one. But you have to know those numbers. Did you just get a $10,000 bill for just one injector or some issues going on? We all know the DEF issues of the world. Are you dumping more money into it than what's needed? Or is it financially sound to keep dumping money into it because it's not that bad? And at some point you have to realize that the truck isn't what you're retiring with. You want to retire with the business to have money in it. And what's the best way to do that? Sell the truck, get a newer one that's got less miles, still used. What is it best for? And one of the things when it comes to trucks, I know a lot of guys who want to be local and then they turn around and they want sleepers because that's the look of it. That's the look of the big bad trucker, is having the sleepers. Why'd you just buy a hotel if you don't plan on sleeping in it?
Right. So talk to us about that then. So you've had a lot of these conversations over the years. What are some of the big things that people miss when it comes to figuring out the cost of doing business, whether it's a small truck operation, a larger mid-sized fleet, or a brokerage? What are some of the things that people don't take into account that they should be taking into account?
I think one of the biggest things I've seen recently, and I own a factoring company, so I know that this is going to be very oxymoron, but this is how you should know I'm being sincere about this. You need to understand your cash flow so you don't have to pay a percentage off of every single load. Somebody started marketing that this idea of like, you own a trucking company, you need to have a factoring company. And so many of these factoring companies have, very strict contracts about how to get out of it and how to all these things. It's like most people don't realize you could actually do it. You could wait 30 days to get paid for something. Now, there's a need and a purpose for it on some levels, but people who have continuously been doing it for years and paying those percentages off, you could be paying 6 figures a year just in factoring percentages. And that's crazy. Wouldn't you rather have that money? The other thing is tolls, especially in the Midwest. I mean, we focus on the Midwest, so that's the area I know the best. There are so many ways to avoid Illinois tolls. I get in the Northeast and others, there's no way in certain routes that you have to hit the tolls. But wouldn't you much rather have that money in your pocket than the state of Illinois getting that toll money? Take the extra 15 minutes and go around. I know that it's not always that easy in every scenario, but generally speaking, there's avenues to save money and not have the time added as great. If you're going to spend $50 in tolls, but it takes you 10 minutes to go around, is that worth it? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes you got to worry about appointment times and all that stuff goes into it. But understanding that there are expenses out there that you're receiving and you're not spending the time realizing that you don't actually have to spend that money. You can have better cash flow. You can understand where this is going. You can find a better route to go to a cheaper gas station, get the diesel cheaper. There's different expenses that can be eliminated pretty easily when you take the time to really recognize what you're doing, do the trip planning. That's huge.
You provide, I think you call it the mock audit, right? The mock DOT audit. Talk to us about that process. Talk about why it's important, and what value that brings to a company.
So I think the first thing I do when I sign on a new client is conduct a mock audit. Now, in my mind, there's 2 big things that it does. 1, it tells me where you're at, and 2, it tells me what you understand and what you don't. Receiving that initial letter, if you've ever had it before, receiving an initial letter from the DOT saying, surprise, here's your audit, can be very overwhelming and stressful. And so my idea is to make that feel the same way. when I conduct the mock audit, they technically know it's coming because I advertise that's what I do in the beginning. But you get that email. You have 48 hours to submit these things in this format the same way the state would require it. And you got to feel that pressure. And then there'll be second round where it's like, okay, I want all the details on this VIN number. I want your 12-month files. I want your driver qualification files for this driver. I want to understand. And if you can pass the audit, it gives us a good starting point. If you can't pass it, we know where to start then. I've got to meet you where you're at, because the smaller operations, truly, they don't understand. A lot of times they've been piecing things together. They heard this from their cousin. They heard this from a guy at the truck stop. The uncle used to drive, and this is what they did. And they're piecing this information together, not realizing that they're missing something completely. One of the big things, consortium versus the drug screening and the clearinghouse. Well, there's a difference between consortium and clearinghouse, but a lot of people don't seem to be understanding that. We dive into it going, okay, I need your clearinghouse permission and I need your consortium stuff.
At the end of the day, the DOT does not care if you heard it from some guy at the truck stop. If they're coming in and auditing you,
Yep.
You are responsible for that. Just like a tax audit. It doesn't matter who told you what when. It matters whether or not what you did was able to be done ethically and legally. So what is the likelihood of a trucking company experiencing an audit?
Well, I believe they've been getting a lot better about it. I know specifically state of Wisconsin just hired several more investigators. I know that they fell behind in 2020, and they are, with everything COVID and then staying at home. And I know that they fell behind in audits and that kind of stuff, but they have been full force swinging, especially under Sean Duffy's leadership, saying we need to weed out these bad carriers. And that's exactly what they're doing. So you don't want the good guys to fail on accident. You want the bad guys to shut their doors. And that's the difference of where I'm trying to help the good guys who just don't want to get hit with something because they had wrong information or whatever the case is. You want the good guys to survive and the bad ones to suffer. And that sounded really morbid, but sorry.
Yeah, we want the bad guys to suffer. I'm all for that. I would say this all the time. All the bad actors get all the good press. There's a lot of people who are tired of all the bad actors getting all the good press, and a lot of people who are tired of the bad actors being tolerated in the industry at all. Which leads us to our next, and I think for today, our final point, even though I feel like we just
started,
scratched the surface of the cost of trucking. We'll have to make sure we have you back on the Broker Carrier Summit in Orlando. You are going to be one of our speakers, and you're going to be talking about the mock audit, the practice of it. We're talking about the cost of trucking. What are you most excited about in that conversation?
Connecting with people that have different pain points, right? And it's understanding that although I've been through 20 years of shenanigans within this organization, I am positive there's things that other people have been through. And so having that collaborative conversation in, a conference setting is going to be real helpful, not only to me personally, but I'm all about, hey, sharing my knowledge and receiving knowledge as well. What has somebody else gone through and how can I help with what I've gone through? We might not be in the exact same industry or the exact same market per se, meaning we're pretty standard. We're dry van, we're Midwest, we do some rail, we do some reefer, but we're not running across the country. So what have other people experienced in other states and that kind of stuff, and understanding that. And I hope that when I'm speaking about my experiences, that they land on some ears and can avoid some other issues. Hey, I've learned stuff the hard way. I've spent a lot of sleepless nights, going, oh my God, I should have known this a year ago. I should have stopped this from happening, or whatever it was. And you kick yourself as owners. And if I can help somebody by just telling my story as to how we did it or what we accomplished, that's a win for me. So having those conversations and being in that room and getting asked hard questions. Hey, if you did this, what happened? I haven't been perfect in my world of 20 years in this career, in this industry. I have not been perfect,
Well, I think it's really good too that I think more and more people are taking that kind of humble approach to leadership. But look, we make mistakes. let me help you learn from my mistakes so you don't have to make them again, and the industry can move forward faster because of it.
Yep.
I'm excited to have you with us in Orlando, excited that you're a part of the community. If you are a good actor who does not want to get shut down for bad reasons, or if you are a good actor in the industry who is tired of all the bad actors getting all the good press, reach out to Pam. Pam, what among all the 6 companies that you own and operate, which is the best medium to get a hold of you at?
Well, I kept it pretty simple for the most part. Pam at Polyak Consulting, if you're interested in that avenue. But if you're interested in assets and that kind of stuff, if you're a broker listening to this, it's Pam at Polyak Trucking. So I've got Pam at Polyak Trucking, Pam at Polyak Consulting, Polyak. So Polyak Trucking or Polyak Consulting. So pretty easy that way.
Fantastic. And Pam has I think it's a weekly webinar or a monthly webinar
Monthly
that you
webinar
do.
right now.
Monthly
Yep.
webinar. So if you want to participate in that, reach out to her through those channels, or see her in person at the Broker Carrier Summit in Orlando. We'd love to have you guys there. Pam, pleasure talking with you again. Like I said, we only scratched the surface, but I want to make sure we have you back on to talk more about more of the intricacies behind the true cost of what it takes to run a freight company. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Again, thank you very much for joining us, everyone. If you are concerned about the cost of operations of your company, do not hesitate to reach out to Pam. She is a fantastic resource. And again, she's going to be at the Broker Carrier Summit, breaking down the cost of trucking and freight even more on one of our breakout sessions. So if you have not yet signed up for Orlando, registration is still open, and early bird pricing is still in effect, although it will be expiring soon. So take care, everyone, and I look forward to talking with you and seeing you soon.